All right. Welcome to the Sarcasm Liberty live stream, everyone. Tonight is our mental health live stream. As you can see, I have a special guest with me for a little bit. This is my daughter, Zoe. Say hi.
Hi.
She's still up, so she wanted to join for a few minutes. And I'm fine with it because she's actually, she's had her own like anxiety issues. So she actually knows.
And Alani had joined.
What that? Oh yeah, it's just Alani joined. Awesome. And then Mike said he was going to try to be along. I guess one of his neighbors was being really loud. Hey, Lonnie.
Hey.
How's it going, man?
Good.
Awesome. So,
You can hear me and everything clearly.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can too.
Can you hear him, Zoe?
Yeah.
Okay. So mainly what I wanted to talk tonight about was like racing thoughts and anxiety, which I'm sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. I need to text somebody real quick about something. What are you doing? Stop that. So, like, those are going to be the main two things tonight is kind of racing thoughts, anxiety, and then ways to kind of cope with it, handle them, you know, being able to deal with it day to day a little bit easier. Because, you know, like racing thoughts, anxiety, it can be really hard to come down from that, to pull yourself back, not feel so amped up, not feel so stressed, not leading yourself into like a panic attack. So that, like, for me, and this kind of ties into the last stream we did last week about using like creativity, because for me, doing things like writing, or we talked about even playing video games and things like that. Those are things you can do that actually, like, kind of, for me at least, help curb my anxiety or my like racing thoughts. Now, like, it kind of, for like racing thoughts, it kind of like slows it down. Yeah, there. It slows it down a little bit for me because, like, when you have racing thoughts, like your mind starts working in overload. It starts going so fast, you can't slow down. You can't focus on one thing. And for a lot of people, like, if you're, it happens a lot when you're trying to sleep and your mind is just kind of like working in overdrive and you can't just relax. Yeah. It becomes very difficult and it's very stressful because, like, for me, you know, I'm like, well, I want to calm down. I want to relax, but I can't, like, you know, it actually kind of like, it kicks my anxiety even into an even higher gear because I'm like, oh, now I can't relax and I can't calm down and I can't have less stress and stuff like that because, you know, I'm just like it just kind of snowballs and gets worse and worse and worse.
Yay, snowballs. So that reminds me of something.
What does that remind you of?
I gotta go get something.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just laughing because she was showing like her little hair clips and stuff like that.
Yeah, we bought a whole bunch from a comic convention, and they're all on the table right now. I found them in my bag, so I put them out here, and then she's been playing with them. Yeah, no, racing thoughts is really hard. It's really hard to kind of like come into, like, to slow yourself down because it kind of typically seems like the more it goes on, kind of the more it kind of picks up a pace, and you get, you know, like, your thoughts start like bouncing from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and it just grows out and out of control. For me, like, my anxiety,
and usually go into a negative side.
Yeah. Like, for me,
positive.
Like, when I have racing thoughts, it's typically like my anxiety. Pretty much any scenario, my brain jumps into the worst case.
Bye.
Are you gonna show them? She has little plush snowballs.
Yeah, definitely does exist.
Did Mom find those?
No.
Your grandma gave them to you?
No.
They appeared out of nothing.
Yeah.
Santa? Okay.
Else.
All right. So, but yeah, like, for me, my anxiety, like, I start thinking about, like, I typically have this thing of, like, I go from worst case scenario to worst case scenario. Like, you know, I'll just be sitting in a restaurant and eating, you know, I'll be with my family or I'll be by myself doing whatever. And then just, if anything, just slightly off, like, I notice it, And then I start kind of jumping from like, well, worst case scenario, like, does this guy have a gun? Is he going to do this? Is this going to happen? What if this happens? What am I going to do? And then it just kind of snowballs and it becomes this whole big thing. And I'm sitting here stressing out about something that's just completely in my head. You know, it happens so much though. And like, that's for a lot of people with racing thoughts and anxiety. That's typically kind of how it goes, is your mind starts running through scenarios. And a lot of the times it's not even rational or logical. It's always emotional, or like, what if this happens? And what if this happens? And how do I handle this? Me personally, that's how my anxiety tends to work. You don't, oh, you gotta, like that. And then you, sorry guys.
Many to see if even if.
So, and then for the guys watching, if anybody watching, if you have some, you know what, I just realized I don't even have the chat up.
That's
Here we go. Awesome. All right. I was like, oh, if anybody has any questions, do the chat. No, I wasn't even watching the chat. My bad. So if anybody has questions, feel free to bring them up. But that's kind of what I want to talk about. And then I want to like some stuff like if it, you know, for people who do have racing thoughts or do have some like not necessarily extreme anxiety, but like a you know,
Hey, oh,
Mike's here. Awesome. Hey, Mike.
Hey.
But like, you know, it doesn't have to be an extreme anxiety. It can just be like having the difficulty to kind of slow yourself down and not jump from thing to thing. And it isn't, okay, and then Sorian said that didn't sound like anxiety to me. That's just like my personal kind of anxiety thing, because like it kind of stems from my time in the service. It's also part of like PTSD. But it's an anxiety that I have. That's how my mind operates. And that's the kind of like, I have a generalized anxiety disorder. So my mind works in overdrive and starts panicking about things that I can't help and things that I can't do anything about.
Like you don't have ADD with it.
Yeah, it just gets out of hand. But here's the thing too, though, like for everybody, you know, I've talked to people who experience anxiety or PTSD and depression in way different ways than what I experience. So, you know, it can differ from person to person, and that's why it can be hard to, oh, thanks. That's why it can be hard to, I don't know, not necessarily discuss, but like that's when you go like to see a therapist, they're not going to be able to see that. So it doesn't show up.
Okay.
But it can be hard to discuss, and then that's why, like, when you go to a therapist, they actually have to spend time with you and get to know you and get to understand like the complexities of whatever it is you're dealing with before they can actually treat you. So, but like one of the things I want to discuss on the stream tonight is you know, like for every person, when you start having these thoughts and they start becoming difficult to kind of rein in, to slow down, and to like just relax, like what do you personally do to like kind of rein it in a little bit? You know, I tried things from meditation to distraction to like, you know, doing the creativity thing, which is a form of distraction. You know, there are service pets. There are, you know, there's all kinds of things. No. It's going to show it backwards, so I think.
It says cool.
It says cool.
Yeah, I can barely read it. Depends on the lighting.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, it can become difficult. Like for my daughter, like she actually, Zoe here, even at like such a young age, she's dealt with panic attacks. That was like something we recognized very early on. That was like, okay, she's having like a panic attack now. And you know, I would find things to kind of slow her down. I would talk to her. I would like tell her like, what's your favorite color? Think about this, and then think about that. And I would kind of do things to lead her mind in different directions. Now, when it comes to meditation, for me, I've actually had a lot of meditation stuff I've dealt with has been like more of a like, clear your mind and don't think of anything, and it never works for me because it's impossible for me to clear my mind. I just can't.
I've never cleared my mind.
Yeah,
it's impossible with ADD. That is literally impossible.
No, and it's incredibly hard because
I would have to pass out. You know what the fucking that happened?
Yeah, like okay, for me, like because they would always want me to do deep breathing, and then they'd be like count. So the best way I could clear my mind was as I was counting, just imagining the numbers in my head as I counted. And that was as close as I could ever get to clearing my mind. It's just so hard. So the meditation app I found, and if you have a phone, like whether it's an Android or iPhone, just go to this, like the app store, and then just like, there's tons of free apps out there, and just type in like meditation or anxiety meditation or something like that. You'll find lots of stuff. The one I have that actually has helped me the most doesn't try to get you to clear your mind. It gives you specific things to focus on. And like the very first time I tried it, it was really weird for me, and it was very like I tried it and it was like it was some really random stuff, and I was like confused at first because it was like, think of this now, think like imagine a dinosaur. And I was like, okay. So I'm picturing a dinosaur. Then it was like, now imagine a location. Now imagine this dinosaur in the location. Imagine the dinosaur doing this. And it was just like feeding you all these like random things, and you were having to like picture different things, put them together in your mind, and it was like kind of feeding you these things to do. And by the end of the meditation session, which was like 10 minutes on my phone, I completely forgot what I was stressing about because this thing was like feeding me all these different ways of like concentrating on something, to think about something specific separate from my anxieties. And that's typically when I say, like when I talk about using creativity, if you're whatever it is you want to do, it helps engage that part of your brain that typically runs away from
to music can help a bit as well.
Yeah.
What I mentioned, if I go outside to the supermarket or go to fitness, I always go with music on because it's funny is that always say like, oh, it will distract you.
Yeah. Well,
in actuality, with me, it actually focused me more on things.
Like music for me personally doesn't typically have a calming effect. That's just me though. Like because I
genre and the person. Not every genre does the
it'll be different for every person because like for me specifically, I listen to music when I write. So when I listen to music anytime, it puts my brain in that creative active mode, and it makes me start thinking of things I want to write. Yeah. So I can't listen to music if I'm trying to relax.
If I'm outside, I still does it anyway because it helped me focus more because I spread the thing more. If I'm forced to focus on one thing, I lose the distraction even far further. So I need multiple things to distract myself.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the whole thing. You have to find, experiment. You have to find things that work for you, and like don't give up on one thing. Like if music for you doesn't work, maybe music accompanied with something else will work. I encourage everybody to take a stab at meditation. If you can go to somebody like a professional who can actually go through like meditation steps with you, I would suggest trying that first. But like I said, there are a ton of free apps on phones that you can just like type in. I think it was what I searched for. I'm trying to find my meditation app now. I don't have it linked, but shit, I'm not gonna be able to find it because I'm trying to do something here, huh? Of course. But yeah, no, just type in like meditation app or like anxiety meditation into like your app store, and a ton of stuff will come up. And like download one, try it. If it doesn't work, download another one. Like the one I had, and this is a sign of a good one, is like it actually had you do a check-in before it started your session, where you had to type in, how are you feeling? What has the day been like? And you had to like answer some questions, and it kind of customized your meditation session in accordance with how you were feeling that day. And that's the best thing you can do. Now from the from the chat, I want to bring up because it says, with me, it feels like I'm in a room full of a million people trying to tell me different ways to deal with my anxiety, and it amplifies over time, which I think that's actually pretty much a great when you have racing thoughts, especially like part of the paradox of racing thoughts and anxiety is you can actually induce more anxiety by trying too hard to control it, because you start freaking yourself out that like, oh my God, I can't stop it. I can't slow it down, you know? And like, for me, like, I sleep like shit most of the times. And like, you know, if I have an event the next day, I'm like, I will always sleep like crap the night before because I'm stressing out about making sure I get enough sleep, and I don't get enough sleep. And it's ridiculous, you know, like I've just not been able to break that cycle. But it's kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy, because you're like, oh my God, I need to calm down. I'm going to have too much anxiety. And then you start freaking out because you can't calm down. And then you just kind of, it snowballs. So, yeah, it can become hard. And that's part of the thing is when you're wanting to, like when you're having these racing thoughts, it's very important to not let yourself like freak out about it. One of the things my therapist always tells me that I actually never even considered, but like sometimes she was like, you know, sometimes you just need to feel anxious. Just let it come, let yourself deal with it, and then let it go. Like let it go through the cycle. Because like as soon as I start fighting so hard against
that's
it,
even how we evolved. Because it learns us like, don't trust everything what you fucking see in front of you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like for me, like if I have a bad pain day or I'm having like a worse day than usual, you know, I stress out about it, and because I'm like, I don't want to feel this way. You know, one of the things my therapist always says is like, it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to feel like shit. It's okay if you're feeling anxious. You know, like these aren't things that we have to fight so hard against. You know, it is okay if you just need to feel like shit sometimes. Just let yourself feel like shit for a little bit and then try to move on. Like, because the kind of thing is like, if we typically fight so hard against it, we kind of compound the problem, make it so much worse.
Yep.
All right. And then from the chat, playing music more than listening to it helps me personally. My therapist gave me a whole list of apps to look up. I'll have to check it out. Check out at least one. Definitely check out the app. Okay. I'll check it in a minute, okay, huh? Okay. So, like just check out one. I would say if you're going to check out meditation apps, pick one. Do not download more than one on your phone at a time, because then you're going to feel like you need to move from, you're going to feel like you want to bounce from one to the other. So I would tell somebody, download just one, start with just that one, focus on that one for at least one whole week.
And check a bit the reviews before it, because there are sometimes false apps, fake apps, and shit like that. So you can know, okay, this is a real app. I can't.
Well, I mean, give yourself, like when you're not feeling too bad, give yourself a test session just to see, like, so you get familiar with it. So when you do really need it, you understand exactly how the app works. So you can know if it's not going to be good for you, if it might be helpful for you, if it's just going to like have a bunch of ads pop up, or who knows what. Yeah, it's important to, you know, but like just start with one, focus on it for at least a week, use that one. And then I would even suggest even like once a day, even when you're not feeling anxious, try it out. Keep a routine, because the more you use it, the more it's easy for you to like kind of fall into that routine. So if you're feeling anxious, going to the meditation app doesn't feel so foreign to you. That's just part of your daily routine. It kind of helps you feel better. And that's why it's important when you have things that you use to cope with anxiety, you really need to incorporate, like use it in your life as much as possible, because if you're only using it to combat anxiety, you're going to start to associate that activity with anxiety only, and you don't want to do that. So like for me, I write when I'm having anxiety to help cope with anxiety, but I also write when I'm having an extremely good day, because you know, I don't have an association there. Writing can come with the good times and the bad times. So Yeah, that makes sense to everybody. And then actually for music specifically, because like me, and I'm gonna shut up here in a minute. Oh hey, Bridget just joined our heathen.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
I've just been kind of rambling on for a minute. I'm gonna wrap up my whole like monologue here, and then I'll let everybody else kind of jump in. But I've just been talking about like using meditation, using different activities to cope with racing thoughts and anxiety, and to make sure that you don't just do it when you're having anxiety, that you do it when you're like in a good mood too, so you're not associating that activity just with anxiety, because then something that's like typically a pleasurable activity for you will start to be associated with a bad thing, and you don't want that. So for me, like I do music therapy, and I would suggest everybody, if you can find one in your your area, try it out. Music therapy has like two different fronts. If you play an instrument, you can actually just go and spend the whole session just playing music. For me, I can't. I'm tone deaf. I can't play an instrument to save my life. But they have this like chair that you sit in, and it has speakers like aligned in the actual chair, so you can like feel the music and stuff. And they turn down the lights, and you just sit there and like you can bring in, like I bring in my own playlist. You can just listen to music for an hour, and that's the only time where I can like listen to music just to calm myself down. It does wonders for my anxiety. So like I would always encourage people, if you can find a music therapist, definitely do that, especially if you enjoy listening to music. It is extremely helpful for
It only
me.
depends per genre, because not every genre does have the same effect on you.
Well, no. Here's the thing too.
Prefer calm music to relax. Some people
like
prefer music with a bit more beat.
No. And you would think that actually, and that was my perception, because when I first started music therapy, I always tried to bring relaxing music. And my therapist was like, just bring in music that you like to listen to. It doesn't matter if it's heavy, if it's death metal, if it's classical music. Bring in stuff that you enjoy listening to, because that's what's important, that you feel like some form of enjoyment or relaxation from it. That's what you want. So, because I've listened to like heavy stuff, and then I've listened to classical stuff, and it'll give me the same effect every time. And it's just like, I don't know, it's really hard to explain. Like you really have to go see the actual music therapist to go through the whole thing. But I would always encourage people to do something like that. There's a lot of stuff out there that we don't even think of or realize is available. And that's part of what I wanted to do this stream. So what I want to do now, because I've kind of blabbed on for like a half hour, so I'm going to give everybody a chance to, if you want to discuss some of like things that you do to kind of rein in those thoughts, kind of slow your mind down, kind of help control your anxiety. What are like things you do, whether it's meditation, whether it's music, like, feel free to jump in, whoever wants to start. I'm going to start tasking people. If somebody wants to jump in.
All right. Well,
Go ahead, Lonnie.
Okay. Well, for sure, I know some things not to do.
No, that's good. That's a good thing to discuss. Yes.
Do not try to research the universe, because then it'll just amplify your racing thoughts. Like, oh, what's at the end of the universe? Is there an end? What's going on? What about entropy?
Depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does work for me, but that
it depends on the person. But like for me, like it causes it to be a lot worse. But like but yeah, I always find that music kind of helps. Sometimes.
Real quick, Lonnie, if I can ask, because we've been talking about music, and I would like everybody at some point to give an input on, if you do use music as a relaxation technique, what kind do you typically listen to?
Well, I just listen to what I listen to, which is just like metal or punk or stuff like that. Or
well, I know what you listen to, so
yeah,
your records.
Yeah, occasionally, like I might venture out into something a little bit different, maybe. Sometimes, like I don't necessarily worry about the style, but more of like, say, like the tempo of the music.
Mm.
And then from there, I'll kind of like go to slower type of music or something like that, and I might try to see if I can slow myself down to that. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. It doesn't work more often than it does work. But
Well, for me, for like slowing down, I've actually found classical music helps the most for me. Because like for some reason I have a hard time listening to like Beethoven and not wanting to shut my eyes and like let my mind wander.
Sometimes like different kind of like instrumental kind of thing, because you kind of whether it's classical or whether it's any kind of instrumental, you kind of feel like, okay, like what is the tone that they're exactly trying to set? You know, can I deduce anything from the title of this song? Like, is the title of the song like telling me what this is about? You know, like those kind of things. So, like, okay, well, how do I imagine what could be going on during this song? You know, it just kind of depends.
Well, that's kind of part of like even what you're talking about there. Going back to like when I was talking about that meditation app that I use, you are kind of feeding yourself, like your brain, specific things to think about, like, you know, like how does this make me feel? Like what is like, you know, like giving yourself images and things to concentrate on to kind of pull your focus. I can't even find it on my phone right now.
Yes. Sometimes I find like say if
it's not Calm, then probably, because everybody uses the free version of that. I feel like. Sorry.
Yeah. Sometimes I find like music that has like odd lyrics or something like that don't really make too much sense. Like instead of like say like a song that portrays a certain emotion or something, it's a sad song or a happy song, because sometimes you can kind of focus on, oh, why don't I feel like that, or why do I feel like that, or this song describes exactly how I feel.
Songs with kind of vague lyrics or maybe like what's the word I'm looking for, like metaphorical kind of stuff, or like it's hard.
Right, yeah. So you really kind of start thinking about, you know, what does that mean versus, oh, this is a song I always listen to whenever I'm sad, or you know, something like that. So it kind of gives you something different to kind of focus on.
Exactly. And like when I was talking about the meditation app I used, like I said, like it fed me some really bizarre things. Like I said, like it specifically said, think of a dinosaur, and then start thinking of a dinosaur in a location and think of the dinosaur doing things. I was like, what the fuck is this thing making me do? And then by the end of like the 10-minute session, I was like, wait, what was I being anxious about again? I could just think about dinosaurs now. Like, you know, like when you kind of start,
think elephant.
But no, when you start thinking, like when you're able to feed your mind things that don't kind of cause anxiety, when you just let yourself maybe,
what the fuck,
you know, and that's where like for me, like one of my therapists always said, like part of my problem was that I have like, you know, I'm a writer, so I have like a very creative mind. So when my anxiety tends to spiral so much because I'm imagining these crazy, implausible scenarios that are never going to happen, and I'm stressing about them, you know, no matter how ridiculous it is. You know, and it's just like it freaks me out all the time. And I'm constantly thinking about these things. I'm stressing about them, you know, and it could, and like, I won't go into details, but like seriously, sometime if I like write it down, some of the things I stress about day to day, people are going to be like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude?
Yeah.
It gets insane though.
That's part of the anxiety. About the weirdest thing sometimes.
No, yeah, anxiety is irrational too,
you have the weirdest phobia sometimes. Well, phobias can cause a lot of anxiety and stress as well.
I mean, anxiety can be rational. Like I have anxiety about things. Like when I'll talk to my therapist and I'll be like, "Well, I'm feeling anxious about this," and she'll be like, "Well, that makes sense because you had an issue with something before. You're about to go, like, you know, like I've had issues with doctors at the VA. So every time I go see my doctor at the VA, if I'm like freaked out and my anxiety's up, And she's like, yeah, that makes sense. Of course you're going to be anxious because you're concerned about something. You know, anxiety can be rational, and then it can also be completely irrational. Typically, our racing thoughts, at least in my experience personally, lean towards the more irrational side because our thoughts are just running wild, racing, going out of control, and that's why it's so hard to rein in. And you know, like that's when you're able to kind of feed your brain like some things to focus on, something because that's like if you like the psychiatrist I see, she has this thing where like you look, listen, and feel, and you're supposed to pick out 2 things in your environment, 2 things that you can see, 2 things you can feel, 2 things you can hear. And then you just kind of like go through those 2 things over and over and focus on those 2 things. You know, and that's things like you're feeding your brain different information, and it does help kind of pull you back from those racing thoughts sometimes. Are you ready to go to bed? Okay, I'll be right back, guys. I got to go tuck her in. Zoe, do you want to say goodnight to everyone?
Good night.
All right.
Good night.
All right. I'll be right back, guys. Keep going.
Aww.
Oh, this is still good.
Yeah, one another thing that I do, I guess this is something that, because I was just thinking about it. Now I don't know if this would help anybody but me, but I like, you know how like on YouTube or whatever, there's all these different like instructional videos for how to do anything, working on a car or making
Yeah, some weird things sometimes.
Yeah. So I'll sometimes like just like get lost and say like how to make, you know, like speakers or something like that. Or there's like several like woodworkers or carpenters or whatever that they show like how to make like bed frames or like little end tables or things like that. And I'll watch their videos just like on like a, not on a loop, but like just one right after another, you know, and I feel like I'm learning something, like even though I don't have the tools to do any of these things, I feel like I'm learning something, and it's giving me like, I guess, something to focus on, you know. I don't know. I do that. So that might help somebody to, you know, to try to look at different YouTube instructional videos or something like that for whatever, how to make anything really, you know, how to work on your car's brakes or something like that. Just something to where you're learning a process, you're seeing how something is done. I don't know. It works for me. I don't know if it'll work for anybody else. So.
No, that totally makes sense actually, because you know, I mean, learning how to do something. A lot of times, anxiety has to do with things that we have no control over in one sense or another. But learning how to make something, that's something you have some degree of control over. You know.
Right. Yeah.
Well, oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna like jump in real quick. That's actually what we talked about in the stream last week, and like the very like last minute impromptu one we did.
Yeah. I was saying how I look at like YouTube like instructional videos, like when people they you know, they do stuff like they show you how to work on your car's brakes, or they show you how to make a table, or you know, anything. You know, and so I'll just like watch some videos like that, and you know, I'm seeing like how, you know, their processes on how these things are done and stuff like that. So,
well, like one of the things I wanted to say, because when I heard the word like control, like for me, one of the things that's very like cathartic about my writing is, like when it comes to anxiety, it comes to depression, things like that, my PTSD, I don't have the control that I want to have over those things. So when I'm writing, though, you know, I have complete and utter control over that. You know, I can create my own worlds. I can do whatever I want, anything I want, anything I can imagine, you know, and I have complete and utter control. And that's the same thing for like if you're playing music, you have control over that instrument. You have control over what like chords you're playing. If you are painting, you have control over your brush. If you're drawing, you have control over your pencil or pen. You know, and that's the thing when you're able to find these things that help, like creative activities, it does help give you this sense of control over something. And when you're using that because you feel like you have a loss of control when it comes to anxiety, that can actually be like very calming. Because like you finally feel in control again. You feel control of something.
You and I have very different creative processes, because when I actually manage to sit down and write, it's because writing is just kind of falling out of my brain.
Yeah. Well, like for me, when I first started writing, like until I was on medication for it, I would have like pretty horrible nightmares. And I actually first started writing to cope with my nightmares. I would actually start writing them out every morning. And some of the like most twisted, bizarre, fucked up horrors, like short stories I've written that people like read it and be like, "Where do you come up with this stuff?" I'm like, "Well, that's pretty much what I dream every night." You know,
I know
like,
someone like that.
Yeah, like no, like I've shown people my horror stories, and they're like, "Wow, that's fucked up." I'm like, "Yeah, welcome to my brain every single night of my life." You know, like I actually like before I got put on medication, like I'm like I don't really recall it that much. I was so out of it, but as my wife tells me, I bolted up and I started screaming at the top of my lungs, screaming as loud as I could for like a few seconds, kind of started gasping for breath, and then just fell back asleep. And that's kind of like how my nights would go. And it's one of the reasons they put me on medication to help curb nightmares. But yeah, it would be really bad for me. I'd be constantly like just like waking up, freaking out, not even knowing why sometimes. So writing stuff down helped me cope with that, because the nightmares would give me so much anxiety. Like I would have entire days where I couldn't even like focus on anything because my head was so attached to that previous experience. And that's how it usually worked for me. And for me, like, you know, when I started writing more like complex things, it was a lot of times, like if I was feeling depressed or I was feeling anxious, it was a way to kind of pour those negative emotions into something. Like, I guess the way I kind of saw it was like I was putting it somewhere else. You know, I was taking it out of my head, putting it on paper, putting it on a word processor, and letting it go. And that's honestly like why I started off writing horror stuff, because I would have all these negative emotions. So, yeah. And like, even like, you know, I did a couple like very short films
horror
too.
in like actual horror, like ghosts and zombies or shit, or more like horror that's like slash gore?
Psychological horror.
Okay.
Because
mine is more personally always when I figure some make horror stuff, it's more in the slash gore type genre.
Well, my most popular short story I did in the Army was like a guy that was like these two like weird like robed figures. Like he kept like seeing him like murder his wife like over and over in different ways, and he like couldn't leave his house, and every time he went into a different room, he would be like somewhere else in his house, and he was so disoriented, and he would just see his wife dying over and over. And eventually it like led into what it was is that he had actually murdered his wife himself and then killed himself, and he was in hell, and the two figures were like these like demons that were like tormenting him in hell. So the whole thing was hell. And when they actually like I wrote this very
Gino Ital mixed.
I have no idea. If I can
but writes mostly
hold on.
mangas and in the absurd.
That's okay. I don't want to lose track real quick though. Let me keep going. If I can find it, I will pull the paragraph, because I actually wrote this. Like it was just one paragraph where they like pulled the illusion of his wife dying, and he was seeing like what hell actually was. And I wrote this like one paragraph that was super detailed, and it sounded like people like read it and they said it like made them like feel sick, because I was trying to like I was pouring all this like stuff from my dreams into it of just how like horrific it felt and how horrifying the experience was in my dreams. And like when people would read it, they actually said like it made them feel physically ill. If I can ever find it again, it's lost somewhere on the internet. But you know, and I would just like, that's how like I wrote stuff though. You know, I did some short, like a few different short horror films of different things.
What was it?
What was that?
I say it made people feel physically ill. So it was kind of like a horror version of Scrody McBoogerballs.
They actually should make that out in real life. They make the South Park actually should make the fucking book.
I don't know that reference, and I don't know if
that's a South Park reference.
Oh.
They
They really should bring the book out in reality.
It's
Really,
the kids.
the book will sell like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
No, in the episode, the kids try to write the most offensive thing they can think of, and every time people read it, it like actually makes them puke.
Yeah.
That is one reason why I want to buy it and read it myself to see if it actually goes that far.
They blamed it. Yeah, they almost got in trouble, so they blamed it on Butters.
Yeah.
They're writing a second book.
Everyone was proud of Butters for
because all the
book.
What did he write? The second book was the poop that took a pee. Yeah.
Yes. Well, the whole concept is that they like set out to write the most offensive, ridiculous thing ever, and then when all the adults read the book, they were reading into it too much and like making it political and stuff. And like,
that is a bit human nature.
Like, it was like some kind of political social commentary. And the whole point of the episode, because the kid, I think it like Stan that says like it's just a fucking book. Stop reading so much into it. It doesn't mean all this stuff you're saying it does, because you know, people will be like, well, this book means this, and they like go into these crazy like
like pro-abortion, against abortion, pro-progression, anti-progression.
It went all over the place. That's like honestly one of my favorite episodes.
They even make fun of what's her name again?
Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yes.
Everybody makes fun of Sarah Jessica Parker. She's an easy target.
That was the whole stick to the episode, and the husband never figured this fuck out.
No. If anybody has Hulu, go watch. I don't remember what season it is, but like just Google like Scrody McBoogerballs in South Park.
Just go on YouTube. You can find the episode on YouTube, or you
can just at the very least find some clips. It's one of my all-time favorites.
It is here on the episode is still here on TV, so reruns always is thing. Go watch Comedy Central. There's a big chance you can still watch.
Yeah, for me though,
one episode is not banned from watching.
Yeah. But to get back on topic, we got a little distracted.
Sorry.
That's a good show.
Yeah, like for me, like I would kind of pour my like raw emotions into something, and then when other people would read it, it would make them feel uncomfortable. And then I kind of realized, like, you know, that was a way for me to like see, or like at least like show other people how I would feel like day to day, because it'd be like, yeah, that feeling you're getting when you're reading when I'm writing, that's kind of like my typical feeling, that very like I feel uncomfortable, I don't feel okay, you know, things like that. You'd feel like people would tell me they'd feel uneasy. And then like I did this one, like I want to say it was like
I heard a train.
Yeah, there was a train.
That was my end.
I think it was like 2 to 3 minute. Like it was a very short film I did, and like I was trying to write something and I couldn't write it, so I grabbed my little handy cam and I just filmed it instead. And it was like the most awesome thing I've ever filmed. But that's somewhere. Fuck if I can ever find it again. But yeah, no, like I would just do stuff like that all the time, and that was a way for me to just kind of purge myself of those feelings by putting it into a writing or putting it into a video. And then even just like, if it wasn't that, because most of the videos I did were comedy, they were comedy sketches. So like, just if I was having the worst possible fucking day and I just felt horrible filming, because like filming like a 2-3 minute comedy sketch would take like 1 to 2 days. Like it would take a long time.
There's a lot more effort than most people think of this.
Oh yeah, no, because there were writing, there was like setting things up, there was like getting, you know, there were multiple takes and doing all this stuff. There was the editing process. You know, it would take a while. It would take a few days.
Especially for the slapstick comedy, that is actually harder to do.
Oh, that was my thing too. I was very like physical comedy before I hurt myself, but yeah,
like
now my
Laurel and
back's
Hardy
like
type style, or just more like modern slapstick.
no. I would like. I have a
Because
video.
that's a bit
I mean, I
different.
was like, Jesus, if I could find it, people would watch it and be like, no wonder your back's all fucked up because of the shit I was doing. But like, no, it was just me. Like, there was this. It was like one of them was in Kuwait, and it was in a tent, and I like jumped on the table and then like flipped over a cot and like landed in the side of the tent and like fell down. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck I was doing. There was just so much weird shit. I just kept hurting myself over and over. I was trying to do like a skateboard ollie on a piece of wood, like just a piece of plyboard, and yeah, it was just me like falling down for a few minutes straight. But no, that's not really why it's hurt. But people could think though because I did some weird shit. But but no, like just the act of doing something like that, something enjoyable, can like be so emotionally lifting. And that's why I would even tell people like for me, something that actually does help my anxiety, help my depression is playing video games. Especially if it's a role-playing game. It pulls my like concentration in. I have to focus, I have to think, and then I'm having a good time at the same time. And it just completely detracts my brain from whatever I was thinking of. It's hard for me to like even think about why I was anxious. But I would tell people all the things I have now that I use day to day to cope with my anxiety, to cope with my depression. This is over the course of 14 years. 14 years since it got to its worst, like since it surfaced and became an issue for me. 14 years of my life, and I would say I only found that stride in the last 3 years. There is a lot of trial and error involved. You will try some things and they are not going to work. You cannot let yourself get discouraged by that. You cannot let yourself feel like it's hopeless. I'm not going to get better. I'm not going to find my thing that really makes me feel better. Because like maybe someday I could even like write out a list of all the stuff I've tried. And you know, like for like a couple years, I was in a horrible state. It was like the most depressed I've ever felt in my life, where like I had thoughts of hurting myself and stuff, you know. And the whole reason we actually moved back to the state I'm in now is because where we were at, my wife was like, I need to get you out of this environment because you're gonna like end up dying because
the environments. Oh, I always
environments like you're in your actual environment. Because
having good friends and people around you can actually help a lot with anxiety as well.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like having a positive support system is very important too. Like me, I'm like for me, I'm super fortunate. My wife is a mental health professional, so I have somebody in my life who is like the most positive person and understands. Typically, if I'm not feeling good, she knows why. Like she could even figure it out before I can half the time. You know, and that's just, you know, that's how her mind works. You know, she hears me talk about something, she's the way her brain works is she's kind of like constantly diagnosing people, not even intentionally. Like she'll watch a show and she's diagnosing somebody. She'll like listen to somebody and she's diagnosing them, and you know, and that's just how her mind works. You know, and she always wants to know more about people and want more information. And but yeah, no, like I'm very lucky, and I have like a great family. You know, that like especially in like the past few years, I've never once felt like I didn't have somebody I could go to and talk to. That's very important to have. That's kind of one of the beauties of this day and age, because when I was having a really hard time, before I could even like feel comfortable enough to talk to my wife, because I was like holding so much of this in, and I didn't want to talk about it because like part of me felt like ashamed of it. I found support groups, just like on Facebook. I even eventually started my own, and now I'm running one at the VA. You know, like somebody found our stream last week because he went on YouTube and looked up like mental health stream and found our live stream last week. You know, there are so many things out there. But part of, and actually, this was our very first mental health stream we talked about. The whole theme there was personal responsibility. It does take a lot of effort, and it can be distressing. It can be tiring. It can be so frustrating. But you can't give up. You have to put in the work. You have to find those things that do help you cope, do help you feel a little bit better. And just don't let yourself feel upset or discouraged or down about things that you do try and don't work. You know, and that's why I would say, like, when you're trying mental health apps, you know, focus on one at a time. But if one doesn't work, delete it, download the next one. You know, just go through a few. I went through like 3 or 4 before I found the one that actually worked for me. Because a lot of the ones I downloaded were like trying to get me to clear my mind, and that just doesn't work for me. I can't clear my mind ever. You know, and I would always suggest people, like, if you're having a really, really difficult time, it's actually very important to seek out some professional help. If it's causing you so much distress in your life, because they can help guide you towards a lot of things. I have read so many books, been on so many like groups, applications for my phone, just constant stream of stuff over the course of my years in therapy from different therapists that have like helped me kind of mold this whole philosophy that I have now, which makes me to the point where I was embarrassed to admit that I had anxiety, to now I am running live streams talking about my anxiety and helping run support groups, you know. So like that stuff can really, really help. It can completely change your perspective of the world. So yeah, it's just, I would just, you know, don't get discouraged. Just keep persevering, keep trying, keep find that thing.
Or find the right people.
Yeah, find the right people. Find that person in your life.
Not
that,
just
like,
things, but find the
yeah.
right people to be around as
Well,
well.
no, yeah, no. If you find a place that makes you feel good, go visit that place. If you find a person that makes you feel good, talk to that person. If you find like a scent that makes you feel good, buy something with that scent and let yourself, like, you know, like spray it around your house or like light a candle of it or something. You know, there are so many, like, you know, like we have all these different senses, and so many of them can actually like help you, you know, just touch, taste, smell.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Try to grow like a little herb garden.
Yeah.
Herbs grow like weeds. They're almost impossible to kill. It's, you know, just have like basil, you know, oregano, you know, whatever. They smell great. You can just pick a leaf and just kind of roll it around your fingers and just smell it. It smells fantastic.
I wish I could smell things.
Yeah, they're like, you know, and they're easy, and you know, you can just go to like a Walmart or whatever. You could try to grow them by seed, you know, but you could just get a plant that's like,
We don't have a
$3.
Walmart here, so it would be kind of hard to go to.
Well, there's some place, I'm sure.
you know, your Walmart equivalent, any kind of home and garden store that sells plants. You know, just get like a little, like a basil plant or something like that, because basil smells amazing. You know, just kind of just grow it and just, you know, use it whenever you cook. And but just having, like, yeah, you're talking about like the smell that you like. I guess like it can be both a creative outlet trying to keep this thing alive, which will be very easy, but you can also
that's
aromatherapy from it too.
Yeah, it gives you, if you can find something that you can smell and you're like, oh, you know, this makes me feel better. But then you're also engaging in this activity of like, I have to put forth effort to keep this thing alive, you know, and I have to water it and I have to grow it and all this stuff. You know, it gives you an outlet.
Yeah, but then you get the
perfect.
aromatherapy. You know, you can, you know, You can use it. It's a useful plant. You can use it in all your cooking. I don't know if you're the kind of person that likes doing essential oil things or whatever. Whatever. It's just, but you can get multiple uses out of it.
Yeah.
Talk about cooking. One thing that is smart not to do when you have anxiety, eat. But if you have anxiety a lot and you compensate with eating, you will gain fucking weight. That is not healthy.
Yeah, here's the thing. I wouldn't like.
You have to
I will say,
okay, I'm gonna do
Yeah.
with eating. It's not a smart idea unless you're gonna work out a lot in comparison to it.
no, I will say,
don't
taste-
start eating
Yes,
to
taste-
deal with your anxiety.
Yes, taste can be a good
It happens,
thing.
people.
Taste can be a good thing to help with your anxiety, but don't overeat. Don't over
Yeah.
Okay, it's this thing. Okay,
Or at least work out in enough equality
Yeah.
to
Well, okay, no,
not to gain much weight.
I mean,
Yeah, whenever we talk about, I guess, taste and smell,
yeah.
it's more about the senses, stimulating the senses when it comes with cooking and eating. Not, don't eat like 4 bags of pork rinds.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, it kind of
something that combines.
Go ahead, Ethan. Sorry. No, you go ahead. Ethan.
Something that combines actually a lot of these different things, like you were talking earlier about getting into a different environment and using all 5 senses.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually like that whole big boom in the idea of forest therapy right now, and
I haven't heard
the main association.
Wait, hold on. Ethan, can you elaborate on that? Because I've actually never heard of that term.
Sure. So it's based on the Japanese idea of Shinrin-yoku.
Okay.
Or forest bathing. And they've kind of turned it into this thing, and there's a licensed organization, and they're still trying to kind of find their feet, because, of course, the first people who come in there are like the hippies, but it was mostly started by Japanese scientists, so there's like a very weird dichotomy there. But
I thought you said forced. I thought you said forced, like F-O-R-C.
Like forced therapy?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I
already heard forest at the moment too.
So what they do,
my first thought was maybe hippies.
All right, hold on, man. Right. Let Ethan finish.
Okay. So what they do, though, so they have these different exercises that they have people do using all 5 senses, and also looking for like natural allegories, like in terms of like letting go of things from their past, just like trees let go of their leaves in the fall. And they get people out, and it's not just the visual and the sound of like what's going on in nature, but it's touch. I mean, it's smell, and it's even taste, because sometimes they will use either local plants, or at least like green tea. They'll actually do like a Japanese style tea ceremony at the end. Or some modified form thereof, to try to incorporate the idea of like the natural taste of the plants. And usually they'll do it without like any kind of sweetener or creamer or something like that.
I posted a link in the chat if anybody wants to check it out. natureandforesttherapy.org.
Yeah.
So yeah. Hey Manus, can you do me a favor? Can you like mute your mic when you're eating? I would really appreciate it. I can hear you munching. Thanks, man.
Yeah, it seems kind of interesting to me, at least. I was thinking of maybe getting a side certification in it once I finish my master's degree, because they do certifications and stuff. But I mean, one of the things that one of the researchers discovered is that certain types of evergreen trees, for example, Japanese cypress is one of the more concentrated forms of this, release into the air certain molecules that we apparently need in our bodies, that actually do things like reduce inflammation, boost the immune system, in some cases relieve depression. And of course, modern medicine being what it is, they're actually trying to see if they can distill some of this down into something that they can sell, and apparently it's like $5,000 an ounce so far in its development.
Of course, yeah. No, it sounds very interesting. Though, actually, I'm gonna show that link to my wife tomorrow. It's something I've never heard of before. This is really interesting. Like I like hearing these different things. Yeah.
I will send you a link to one of the main research videos on it. If you like. Hang on. I'll put that in your DMs on Twitter.
Awesome. And then, like I said, for anybody watching, I threw up a link to natureandforesttherapy.org. That's like the first, if you just Google forest therapy, that was the first link that came up. I'm sure you can find some more things, but the subject for the thing is like the medicine of being in the forest. We are the leading global voice for forest bathing and forest therapy. I have no idea what forest bathing is, but yeah. They have like books.
It's the Japanese Shinrin-yoku term. That's the literal translation from the Japanese, as opposed to.
They have like a book about it, like experience the healing power of nature and all this kind of stuff. And if you're kind of somebody who
sounds kind of
well, no, there's a lot of people.
It sounds very granola to some people, but like that's fine. Kind of it marries those two sides to.
Yeah, no, there are a lot of people who would prefer like kind of natural remedies and stuff like that. So I think that's something like if you're not like if you're sketchy on like psych meds and different things, like that's something to look into, or like it's just something like I can imagine just going into nature like and just feeling more relaxed because I'm away from all this shit. Yeah.
Well, that's more of the forest bathing in itself. Like just going out into the forest, you still get those molecules from the trees that they were talking about, and you still get like they had people take walks through cities and take walks through more natural places, and like they observed the anxiety and depression levels of people afterwards, and just getting outside in the city didn't do as much for some people basically.
Yeah. No,
in fact, their anxiety might have even gone up.
Going outside in nature actually creates more anxiety because some people
for some people
around people.
Everybody's different. Everybody's different. Yeah.
Versus forest therapy. Usually they actually have a forest therapy where they refer to them as guides with you. And they partly refer to them as guides because not all of them are also certified therapists.
Mm-hmm.
They are usually only, like some of them are only certified in that specific form of therapy, which is kind of but
well, I would say
they do a good job with it with their 6-month program. It's because the idea is
if I can real quick,
nature
like
is the therapist,
like being certified and stuff, and that's typically when you're like have to be certified in something that's like a government thing. More like kind of new agey stuff, or like stuff that's not been like around for too long, like in Western culture. If it doesn't go through all the trials and constant stuff, typically like the American government doesn't even like my wife, as I said before, she uses I'm blanking on it now. You guys have heard me say it so many different times. Narrative therapy.
Yes.
Forgetting that. She uses narrative therapy, and that's actually like she's not even able to bill insurance companies. Yeah, because insurance companies don't see narrative therapy as a legitimate thing, even though she's had like it works so well that she's actually had like a problem with like retaining clients because they feel like they can move on. But like that's just the thing is like if you see something you're like, oh, this isn't like certified by this or this is that seems shaky, don't let that dissuade you. Just because
this is something like they have their own certification is what I mean. But it's like they're certified in that specific type of therapy. They're not certified as overall therapists, so they can't diagnose. But what winds up happening is that normal therapists, if they don't have a forest therapy training, will actually kind of sometimes write a prescription for forest therapy on the side. So that's kind of it also tends to lend itself to like group therapies and stuff like that.
One of the things was suggested to me before was equestrian therapy, which is going and grooming a horse for a few weeks and like spending time with the horse, eventually riding the horse, and that was supposed to be like
someone.
I still keep thinking about My Little Pony with that name.
Someone was complaining the other week about how useless they thought equine therapy was, though. I think it was on a video that Chair was playing on one of his streams that they were trying to expose it as being BS in their opinion or something.
Well, and that's here's the stupid thing. Everybody's different. For me, cognitive behavioral therapy is complete and utter horseshit because it's never worked for me. and I fucking hate it. And every time the VA wants to do that because that's their go-to thing, I'm like, it's not going to fucking work, because they've tried it for mental health, they've tried it for pain, they've tried it for sleeping. It never fucking works for me. But I've talked to so many veterans that it's been extremely helpful for. Just because like somebody personally doesn't think like, well, I think this one's bullshit, doesn't actually mean it won't help somebody, even if it's just like a placebo effect. If it's helping somebody's like reduce their stress and make them feel better, why the hell shouldn't you just let them go do that thing if it's not hurting themselves or somebody else?
I think too many people get caught up in this idea of a cure.
Yes.
Well, they also want it to be
treatment or a management.
They get hung up on just the fact that all medicine must be evidence-based in the sense that it must work better than a controlled placebo effect, et cetera, et cetera. But then the problem becomes is that the standard of evidence becomes higher and higher for more skeptical people. For example, there's multiple exposés now that are trying to throw out 80% of scientific studies because they didn't use a high enough p-value, which, you know, I mean, yeah, okay, you usually want to have a p-value of 0.01 instead of 0.05, but you know.
Well, okay, like for here's an example. My wife, as I mentioned her, and she will come on these streams sometimes. One of these days when my son actually goes to sleep and she can come down. No, but she wants to come on sometimes.
We have the live stream later.
For her, like she's very professional about what she does. She reads constantly about psychology stuff, and she's constantly wanting to learn new things, and she wants to absorb all of this stuff. She fucking hates evidence-based treatment, like, because like that's all the VA wants to do, and she's like, it's horseshit. You cannot focus on only that. You need to be willing to try different things, go outside those boundaries, because if you don't, you're just going to be stuck in this like constant loop. And when treatment doesn't work, people just throw up their hands and be like, well, you're helpless.
Be checked out and research as well.
Yeah.
What a lot of people forget is that all treatments that are currently evidence-based were at one time experimental.
Yes, that's an excellent point. You know, like, and that's where like for narrative therapy, because there's a push for like narrative therapy to be more accepted. You know, but that's the thing is like whenever there's something new that comes around and people won't give it the time of day because it's new. And I'm like, just because it's new doesn't mean it's bad. Like, sure, there's a lot of horse shit out there, but there's a lot of legitimate stuff out there.
It's good to be skeptical about those things, because who knows, maybe it is a bad thing.
Skepticism isn't a bad thing. Being skeptical about something is fine, but outright dismissing it just because, you know, you can't pull up a bunch of research articles over the course of like 20 years.
On the side burner.
You were both talking at once. I don't think anybody heard that.
I didn't hear what you were saying, man. Let's go ahead.
All right. What's it? Always have all the options open, but like put some stuff you think, okay, I trust this less. Don't remove them. Just put them on like a side burn. Like, okay, if this stuff doesn't work, I will codify this.
Well, as I said in the creativity stream, my whole approach when it comes to mental health, be open-minded, be willing to try some different things. As long as you are not hurting somebody else or yourself, like, give it a shot. You know, if you're not causing any kind of personal or harm to anybody else, then you don't really have much to lose by just trying a different method of treatment. When it comes to medications, it's a slightly different area, because, you know, like, there are side effects and stuff. But when it comes to just like trying out different methods of treatment, when you're talking to, and as I've said, if you want to try the medication route, find a psychiatrist. If you want to try the non-medication route, find a psychologist. That's the difference. Psychiatrists are going to do medication. Psychologists are going to do like therapeutic treatments. They're going to find therapeutic methods that work that don't require medication. But like, you know, I've tried so many different things.
And if you don't want to pay through the nose, find a therapist with a master's degree.
Yes.
Well, that's one thing. People with autism, ADD, and ADD sometimes cannot go to one of the two because they have that stuff. I don't know exactly which one it was anymore. But you will usually get pushed to the one. Okay, you have to go to that one. I cannot remember which one it was anymore. But...
Like, for me, like, I always tell people, like, if you go see a therapist and you're like, this person's not helping me, don't be afraid to voice your concern. And then if you don't feel like you're like give it a solid month at least. And if you don't feel like you're getting any benefit from it, because any good therapist in your very first session and then a good chunk of your next session is mostly going to be just getting to know you, your personality.
Mhm.
No good therapist is going to jump straight into treatment because they need to know how your brain works. They need to know what kind of person you are. What are you going to respond to? How do I talk to this person? So every good therapist I've ever had, my first few sessions were all about them just getting to know who I am as a person, asking me personal questions and talking and talking and talking. Then we moved on to treatment. All the bad therapists I've had jumped straight into cookie cutter methods. I would come in saying, I have an anxiety problem. And they would say, oh, well, we're going to do this to fix it. And I would always just feel like this is garbage. This is not helping me. Like I had one therapist who he asked me a question and I gave him an answer. And the answer I gave him didn't help him get to the next step in what he had already planned to say. So he tried to push me into a different direction. So he could go to the next step because the answer I gave him did not let him go to the next step. And he didn't know what to do. So he the only way he could like proceed was to force me to change my answer to fit his like cookie cutter approach. And that's like, you know, if you're seeing it there, like that was the last time I saw that guy. I was in my flat out. I just didn't go back. And when I was asked, I was like, because he didn't even know who I was. He didn't know anything about me. And I always bring up that as an explanation as of a bad therapist. The two best therapists,
people who go by the book and people who go by the person.
Yeah, if it's a cookie cutter approach,
go like, okay, all the people you've like autism, all the people with autism react like this, so we act like this. That's absolute fucking bullshit. But people like who will go person reaction, like, okay, I'm gonna go how the person react to this, and then I go see further.
Well, okay, like any whether like it's a doctor for physical pain or like therapeutic, whatever you're seeing. If they start into that cookie cutter approach where they're very unwilling to budge on any way they're proceeding with stuff, that's when you know you have a problem.
I'm just trying to imagine this with like a regular like general practitioner.
Yeah. I've had them.
My knee hurts. It's my right knee. Don't you mean it's your left knee?
No, I've
no.
not that exact scenario, but I've essentially had that experience before. Where I am hurting here, and it's like, well, no, you need to hurt here so we can go to this step. I basically had that. Yes. But no, like the two best therapists I've had, they like, because they had to, because this is what the VA forced them to do, both of them had to start off with cognitive behavioral therapy, which I fucking hate so much. It never works for me, but both of them started. And both of them immediately recognized that it didn't work for me and moved on to something else. And they would always try a few different things, see it didn't work. And then after a couple months, I would see them starting to pull from different kinds of therapy and like customizing a therapeutic approach to my ongoing care of like what kind of person I am, how I'm going to react to different things, what needs to be done for me. That's the kind of therapist that you need. That's going to treat you in accordance with who you are as a person, not with just what your
you need more people in mental health in general.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not okay. Like, because when I go in to see my therapist,
people are not that good for mental health places.
No, like when I go to see my therapist right now, and like I go to see her, and when I sit down, and she starts trying to do treatment, she doesn't treat me as generalized anxiety disorder and like depression and PTSD. She treats me as Josh with anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Okay, here's your personal stuff. This is how you cope with things. This is how you experience things. A good example is earlier I was describing what my anxiety was like, and somebody said, that doesn't sound like anxiety to me. And I'm like, yeah, because people experience anxiety differently. And it's a great thing. Like, we all experience this stuff in different ways. We react to therapeutic methods and medications in different ways. So, that's one of the things when you do go into therapy, you have to be open-minded, but you also kind of have to be able to recognize bullshit when you see it. If your therapist is completely unwilling to budge on anything, they're probably a bullshit therapist. Find somebody that's working with you and wants to get to know you and wants to understand you and wants to treat you in accordance with what kind of person you are. Cookie cutter shit does nothing.
Yeah, like the last time I went to counseling, I think we might have found the root cause of my anxiety.
Oh, yeah?
And it's I have because I was complaining about a job that I had done because it had caused me to become very angry because I had done everything on my end correctly.
Mhm.
And the other people, they had not done all of their stuff. And I'm just like, look, it's I think if you have a job, no matter what it is, you need to do it properly. If you're cleaning toilets, those toilets need to be, you need to be able to eat off of them. Like whatever your job is, you need to do it. You need to do it properly. And I'm just going, and she's like, it sounds like you have like very, very high standards. I'm like, well, yeah, I have high standards for myself. And I said something like, and that's, that's a thing. Like lately, because I've been, like I haven't been making as much money and stuff like that as I used to. I don't feel like I'm doing up to my level of being a husband and father and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, wait. I was like, I think that's it. I was like, I think that's the thing, is that in my mind, subconsciously, I'm not to my standards. I'm not to my own standards.
Mhm.
So that's causing me to, I guess, I don't know, but I'm like,
Is it,
I think,
sorry, because I kind of suffer, like I struggle with the same thing. Do you ever have like a feeling of guilt because of it?
yes.
That's exactly what I deal with.
And like I was saying, and she was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And we started like talking about it, and I'm like, I think that's probably it. And like whenever I talked to my wife about it later, she was like, she's like, I think you're right, because while you have had some anxiety attacks before, you never just had just general anxiety.
Mhm.
Just
It was
all
always
the
like
time.
you had a trigger.
Right. There was always something that triggered it, and then it went on, but there was never anything where I was just all the time just subtly anxious all the time like I am now. And she's like, that didn't really start until you had gotten laid off and you had struggled and then went through like 4 or 5 jobs, in a couple years or whatever, because everything kept not working, or it was temporary work and I didn't get picked, to go to the next contract, or there was always something happening.
Mhm.
And she's like, 'cause that's so important to you, is being able to provide and and do and work and stuff like that and work steady. She's like, that's probably it, because
Mhm.
in your mind, that's what you have to do.
Um,
And I was
no,
like, yeah, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So I think that's probably the root cause of it, is just, you know, um, just not being in just in general, like a good place or whatever. Like we're living with my parents right now
Mhm.
because we can't afford
I've been there.
to be on our own, you know. And it's good. The house is big enough to where we're not like all on top of each other and stuff like that. But it's not right in my mind. it's okay, and I know that it's okay that this is happening, but I just can't. I can't accept it, I guess, and that's why, and that's what I figured was probably like in the past year or so has probably been just the root cause of, I guess, my generalized anxiety disorder.
Mhm. Well, yeah, for me, like part of like the thing I struggle with is like I get depression due to like the official diagnosis is like depression due to a clinical or like a physical illness or something. I forget the exact term, but most of my depression stemmed from like my physical limitations. So if I'm having a bad pain day and I can't go do something with my kids, I get super depressed, and then I start to feel guilty and I start to feel bad because I have this like idea of I'm supposed to be up here and then I'm down here. And part of the thing my therapist always, that's where I asked about the guilt. It sounded very familiar. Part of the thing my therapist always reminds me of is, it's because like I think we tend to kind of hold ourselves up to specific standards, and sometimes they're even pretty unrealistic. Like I have this kind of
I certainly have a very unrealistic standard for myself.
Yeah, I mean, like I see myself as like what I'm supposed to be as a husband and a father and stuff like that. And then anytime I'm like slightly below that, I'm extremely hard on myself, even if it's completely reasonable that I'm below that because of my physical limitations or problems I'm dealing with, or the fact that my expectations are unrealistic to begin with. Like I have this idealized version of everything's just supposed to be perfect all the time, and it's not. And it's like, well, of course it's not going to be. Life isn't perfect. Everything's not going to work out the way you want it to. You're going to have shitty days. And my kids don't hold it against me. Like, it's stupid for me to get like so bent out of shape over stuff. But,
right.
Part of the problem is that when we're dealing with things like this, it can be really hard to separate the logical and the emotional, because we kind of jump into that emotional response of like, well, this sucks. I don't like feeling like this. I wish it could be this way. But then logically, when you start thinking about it, it's like, well, it doesn't need to be this way. There are circumstances. It's understandable. And the logical and rational tends to be more. Let's see if I can put this in the right way. I don't want to use this word, but it takes more effort to push towards the logical side, because I think our brains tend to jump to the emotional. If you have anxiety, especially.
Yeah, we're animals. Humans are animals, and animals react more in the emotional way than in the logical way.
It's instinct.
Yeah, no. I mean, like especially if you have like an anxiety kind of thing too, like your brain jumps straight into the irrational, the emotional. That's why we have anxiety. Because if we were constantly thinking logically, if we were constantly thinking rationally, we wouldn't have a lot of these problems. It would be easier to kind of focus in and think about things rationally, solve these problems. And that's part of like the whole thing, going to therapy, talking these things through with somebody, getting perspective. That's why it is so important, because, you're gonna, like when it comes to anxiety, it can be hard to rein yourself in, and it's very good to talk to somebody about how you're feeling and what the situation is, and then have that person analyze it rationally and then speak back to you. And then you're like, oh, I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's why it can be really, really good for you.
And one of the things, like, if you can recognize, which I think pretty much everyone with some sort of anxiety disorder can, if you can recognize that it's irrational, then and it's very healthy to realize this, then that you are not your disorder.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You are not bipolar disorder. You are not anxieties, whatever it, it's not defining you
It's
because
still
you're
part of
not right. Yeah, it is still part of you, but it's you recognize that, okay, well, this is the disorder that's making me think this, even though I know in reality that I am a good husband, I am a good father, but it's it's that disorder that's kind of making you think like, oh well, you're not making enough money, oh well, you're oh, now that you're at work, now that you're away, for so much time, and and then it's all these kind of things, and it's just you have to. I think that's why, like, I think medicine is important. That's my opinion. Is that
Mhm.
medicine is important because it can help kind of reel that in to where your rational side can take over.
Mhm.
And be like, okay, yeah, well, that's just well, this is all I can do right now. So
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I mean,
this
you
is
see,
how it
like
is.
for me, if I can offer like a comparison, when the VA pulled my pain meds and then they sent me to aquatic therapy in lieu of pain medication, and
Aquatic therapy.
the aquatic therapist was like, okay, you're wincing in pain while you're in the pool. You shouldn't be in that much pain in the pool. Every exercise you're doing is causing you pain. You're not able to do the exercises. And he was furious at the VA, and he like wrote to them, like back to them, saying like, do not send me a person that you are doing nothing to manage their pain for, because I can't do anything for them if you're doing nothing. Because like his whole thing was is like if you're in so much pain, you need something to help control that pain a little bit so you can do these exercises and do this physical
Right.
therapy and do this stuff to help you get better so you can eventually come off of that medication. And that's where like for
Yeah,
me, like I don't ever want to say somebody should get medication, but like if you are okay with it, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of it. Be
Oh, yeah,
cautious. Yeah,
absolutely.
be cautious.
Don't. Yeah.
Make sure you have a good psychiatrist. Make sure you talk. Make sure you have somebody who's conservative when it comes to medication. Like I have a very good psychiatrist. She's very conservative with medications. She's very cautious. She explains everything to me. If you ever feel like something's making you feel worse, don't keep taking it. Be very cautious and be very aware. But medications can help you, and they can help you like eventually. The whole goal is to eventually come off of it. Like where you can get into a more controllable area where you might be able to manage things on your own.
Right. If you have, a like, say if there's something, say like you broke your leg or something like that, but it was healing for so long that your muscles deteriorated or something like that, and it causes you pain to walk or to do your job or whatever it is, you might need pain medicine to get through that to where you can build that strength back up. And that's the kind of that's the way that I kind of think of medication for mental health, is that there's things that you yourself may not, this is depends on person to person, that you may not be able to control, and that is okay. If you need a little help getting past that to where you can then be in the right place to where you can go, okay, I can think about this problem that I'm having, this thing that always causes me anxiety, this thing that always causes me to be depressed, whatever it is. How can I deal with this problem? So in your case, the aquatic therapy was probably going to help build up back pain, back strength or something like that.
Yeah, like core strengthening. Yeah. But I couldn't do core
Right.
strengthening at the pain I was in. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But there's no way you were going to be able to do it because you're in so much pain.
Mhm.
And that's what I try to do. That's why I try to whenever I try to describe it in a physical sense to people that may not quite understand because they don't have a mental health problem or something like that. And they're wondering like, oh well, how does that, they don't understand it. So I try to describe it in a physical sense, because it is a sickness, just like a physical sickness, So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and here's the thing too. When you have mental health issues, no matter what it is, if it's anxiety, depression, PTSD, when you're trying to explain that to somebody that has never experienced it, it is incredibly difficult to get them to understand the level that it is. Like for me, I have some very severe sleep problems. It's still undiagnosed. They're still trying to figure it out. They haven't been able to figure out what it is. But I have this constant fatigue. And then I don't like talking about it because anytime I bring it up and I'll be like, yeah, I'm really tired. And be like, oh yeah, I didn't, I only got 5 hours of sleep. I know how that feels. I'm like, fuck off. You don't know how I feel.
That's incredible.
But that's why I hate saying that I have bipolar disorder sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I can snap just like that. No, it's not bipolar disorder.
Here's the thing for me, because when I talk about when I really get into depth of my level of fatigue that I have, just think back in the past month, and most people can think of a time where they felt rested, they woke up from a nap or they woke up in the morning, they felt good, yeah, I feel like I have some energy or something like that. It's been so long for me, I actually do not remember what it feels like to feel rested. I constantly feel like I'm on the verge of falling asleep. My fatigue is so heavy. It I have really I don't know how well it shows up on the thing, but I have really bad bags, very dark circles in my eyes. Yeah, I always look tired. For a long time, people always thought I was high or something because the way I would look. I'm no, it's just I even if I if I get a full 8 hours of sleep, I will wake up feeling like I didn't sleep at all.
Oh, that was years ago.
It just it doesn't change for me. It just I haven't felt I haven't had the feeling of being rested for at least 6 years now.
I know my brother had a lot of issues with that after he came back from Iraq, stuff like that, where there was just some times where he was like, I don't sleep. I just lay there with my eyes closed. And he's like, I suppose it's sort of a rest, but he's like, I haven't slept. He's like, I just don't sleep.
Last night.
It's not insomnia either.
No, last night I went to bed at, I fell asleep around midnight, and then I woke up at 2 o'clock, and I've been up since. Tonight, I'm going to go to sleep after the stream. I'm going to lay down after the stream, try to go to sleep. I'll probably sleep about 2-3 hours, and then I'll be up for the rest of the day. And it can become stressful because, especially when it's at night, I would actually rather be awake all night, fall asleep for a couple hours, and then wake up. What I hate is falling asleep at night and then waking up in the middle of the night and then being awake for the rest of the day because the day feels so much longer to me. And by the time the day starts for everyone else, I've already gone through an entire day myself, and that's it's stressful because I've done I've found ways to keep myself occupied, and I've done this and I've done that. And by the time everybody wakes up, it feels like they're about to start their day. I went through an entire day on my own, by myself, and that shit weighs on you after a while. It becomes very it can become lonely. It can become stressful. Your days feel way too long. And then what? I'll have weeks I'll have a couple months like that, and then I'll have a month where I just can't be woken up, and I'm just asleep all the time, and it's just I will sleep most of the day away, and then I'm awake a couple hours of the day, and even if my wife there was it happened last year around Christmas, like actually had like a rug burn on my forehead because she was trying to get me up out of my chair, and I fell down and hit my face on the carpet so hard it gave me a rug burn. Like I couldn't be woken up. Like I would get up and try to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and I would be standing there in front of the toilet falling asleep. And my wife would come down and be like, "Go lay down," because I'm like staggering in the bathroom, like trying to stand up. Every time I would start to fall asleep, I'd like stumble, and she could hear me upstairs. Like it's insane.
Your body's just crashing the fuck down.
Yeah, it's all over the place. It's all over the place. I have
been there, like my body crashing down, but my mind isn't. That is really annoying.
Yeah. But here's like part of the problem is like when the VA, like the VA has done 5 sleep studies for me, and every time they've had inconclusive results because they're always looking for like one specific thing. The only things they've rolled out is sleep apnea, narcolepsy, and a thyroid problem, and that's it. In 10 years, almost 11 now. But yeah, it's just they just don't. No, wait, shit. We think 10. Oh fuck! It's been like 14 years now. No, 13 years now. Shit, I got my math wrong. I forgot what year we were in. No, it's almost 13 years now. But no, like it's just they don't do anything about it. Like they can't figure out what it is. I've actually had doctors legitimately drop my case because they couldn't figure it out, and they were just like, "I don't know, it doesn't fit anything," and then they just drop it. And that's the VA for you, but they just don't fucking do anything. But that's a whole other thing I don't want to get into right now because
they keep using you and like, okay, we don't know what the fuck we're doing, so we just do shit. That is not a good thing. That's better that they like, okay, we give up, we try somebody else to do it. Maybe that person can.
I don't want to go into it. Like that's how the VA works though. But I'll save all that for another stream. But yeah, it's like I mean like that's just. But here's the thing: is like when I really try, it isn't like legitimately impossible for me to specifically describe how tired I feel. I just can't do it. I can't do it justice. I've tried to explain it to people and everybody always finds it relatable. And I'm always like, if you can find it relatable, you don't get how bad it is for me. And that's like part of the thing I always want to tell people is like, if you feel like you understand what I'm saying, you do not understand how bad it is. And I would say that goes for a lot of mental health. If you don't have mental health stuff,
and because whenever people try to, there's a completely different thing. But whenever people try to relate to me, having bipolar disorder, I'm like, no, it's not. Like I don't just get angry all of a sudden. Like that's not how that works. It's. I mean, yes, sometimes that does happen, but that's not like the definition of having it,
Okay. For me, I don't have bipolar disorder. I've talked to many different people, like through running support groups. I've talked to so many people. I've heard so many issues. I've heard so much explanation. I understand the symptoms. I understand the details of what bipolar disorder is, but I don't understand what it's like. I cannot relate to bipolar disorder because I don't have it.
Right.
I can't relate to it. If somebody has generalized anxiety disorder, if they have like clinical depression, if they have PTSD, I can relate to that and I can be like, I can find common ground. But
there's things that you can relate to. Some like saying like
okay, I would say I can relate to symptoms of bipolar, but like I can't like the whole concept I can't actually like say I get it.
That's a program what I try to do here. That is like, okay, people like grew up in like organizations that grew like life with autism or like bipolar disorder. They go to like a short course and then like they can help to teach the people who work here or the younger people who have the same problems as them, like how to go to life and shit like that. Just like they use their own experiments to life to help other people with it.
Yeah,
the only problem is a lot of people who work in the organization usually don't like that people. It's like, and because they go more at the book and they don't want to go work at person-driven things, so some of them is like, we don't want to use the people, fuck them, and they get thrown down to the totem pole. Like,
I mean,
it's really annoying.
Well, I mean, some of it can also be. I mean, first of all, I mean, there's all kinds of different types of people with bipolar. It's, you know, some people don't get angry at all and stuff. But I mean, one of the things too, though, in terms of like the more well-meaning type of empathizing, I mean, some of it is even just down to, I mean, like someone was saying about symptoms, it's like you may not know that specific suffering, because we get into this with like people talking about identity politics too, and saying, you know, that I have my specific form of feeling ostracized because of my race or my religion or my whatever sexual orientation, whatever else, and that you can't relate to that unless you are also this thing, and therefore you can't talk about it. I mean, that in some ways kind of can come from the same place, and I feel like that there's a degree to which we need to have like that kind of restoration of empathy of like, on the one hand, there's still people who aren't well-meaning, who don't get that they don't understand it, but at the same time, there are others who are just trying to reach across that human divide of, I am not in your mind, but I understand. It's like, you know.
I never get mad at anybody that does it, you know, because I know that they don't understand, and you know, and that's fine. You know, it's fine that they don't understand. I'm glad that they don't understand.
I do want to stress, like, I have no problems with people wanting to be empathetic. I think that's very, like, if you're trying to be empathetic towards somebody, that's good of you, and trying to understand, like, thing, you know, it helps, you know, because you can't, here's the thing, like most therapists aren't suffering from the same issues that you are, but they can still help you, you know, and they understand what you're going through. But it's like, what I'm kind of getting at when I'm saying is like, you know, if I'm saying like, oh man, like, you know, my anxiety is in high gear, and somebody's like, oh yeah, I feel anxious too sometimes. And I'm just like, no, you don't quite get what I'm talking about. Like I'm like anxious to the point that I'm like flipping the fuck out. My heart is racing. I can't breathe. My chest is all tight, you know, and it's different between just being like, oh, I'm worried about something, and then actually having legit anxiety. And like, that's what I'm talking about, is like when it's hard for people.
Like, have you been to the emergency room 4 times because you think you're having a heart attack?
Yeah, I've been there.
I mean, there's qualitative, I mean, there's even like, where it can be qualitatively both something severe and very different. Like, for example, when you were saying about, you know, getting upset that like people think they understand your fatigue, and like, like for myself, when I feel tired all the time, and I related a little bit to it, but I also know that like yours is more from your veteran related experiences, it sounds like, whereas
it seems like
mine is that I'm borderline anemic, and lately I've been having sinus problems so bad that my breathing is actually like, I'm actually not getting enough oxygen into my body most days.
So it's almost like
explain 2 things so people who watched it can know what the fuck you have.
Well, and I think that relates back to Heathen, like the being able to relate to some kind of symptoms of something is understandable, because there are things like, okay, like for me, like I have depression and generalized anxiety disorder. If me and Lonnie sit there and talk about my stuff versus bipolar disorder, we're going to find some crossover. And we're going to be like, oh yeah, I know what that feels like.
And I also have generalized anxiety disorder.
Yeah. I mean, but like, I mean, I've
I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and that's an anxiety thing too.
I run like 3 different support groups now. And I've talked to people of a huge variety of mental health issues. And typically, just about everybody I've ever talked to, I can find some crossover. I can find some level of like, yeah, I get that part. There's always things that I'm just like, I can't relate to it, and I just try to understand it. I never be like, oh, I know what that's like. If I can't actually like legitimately relate to it, I'm just like, oh, that sounds rough, you know, and I try to hear them out. I try to like look at it from a, I would rather,
well, exactly.
I would rather do that for myself, you know, talk to people with different ailments, because whenever I talk to people with bipolar disorder, I'm just like, holy shit, you're fucking crazy. Like that's the thing. Like when I talk to other people with the same thing, I'm like, these people are batshit bananas. Like, holy shit! Like, what the hell?
Oh,
Like,
No,
I've
like,
got a story for you.
I run support groups, right, where I'm the guy that's supposed to be there to help people, and I don't say this to them, but I've like been trying to help people and trying to like talk to people, and then the person is just like unwilling to listen, and in my head I'm just like, oh, just fuck off already, like just like, will you just listen to me? Like it gets so frustrating.
Like whenever I was in the hospital, and I had to do the group therapy sessions, because if you didn't go to the group therapy sessions, you weren't getting out of the hospital. So I was told. So I had to go in there, and I'm just sitting there. It's a room with like 10 people, and they're all just going through their stories, and some of them had bipolar disorder. I'm just like, I hate these people. I hate them.
I think
they're irresponsible. They're and I'm just going through all this stuff and judging the hell out of them, which I felt well, no, actually I didn't feel bad for it, but but it was
Like,
just kind of
this
like I would much rather talk to somebody with say like schizophrenia or something like that, and try to find common ground between it, because I don't understand what they're going through. And but I can find a common ground or something like that. But just whenever I talk to people with bipolar disorder, I'm like, oh my god, like I don't have your type of bipolar disorder,
Yeah. And that's also the danger with like with some of it with therapists too, like on the therapist end of it, like because most therapists have had some sort of mental health issue in their past. And one of the things is that it's often hardest to try to treat people who have your same disorder, because the immediate thing you're drawn to is, well, this is what worked for me.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it's like, that's not the approach.
Like I always talk about, typically when I'm talking about anxiety, I'm always talking about things that work for me, and then I always try to branch out from that. But I usually start with that. I'm not a mental health professional, which is I always try to tell people, like, look, when I discuss mental health stuff, like at the most, I am like a support group facilitator, and that's where my training is. But like, that's the most I can do, and I can try to relate, and I can try to give perspective, but I cannot treat you. I'm just here for support.
Like that.
One
like
of
that meme. I think it was like a Twitter meme where it's like whenever you're trying to give someone life advice to help them, but you got to end it with, but IDK. So you don't ruin their life if they listen to what you said.
Okay, but no, here's something I do want to bring up, because I think Heathen, you might have brought up the like a lot of, like, because the therapist I see, she does have like an anxiety problem. She's actually, after a while, she's like us getting to know each other, she's actually become very open about it to me, of like, like, okay, well, like, when I'm having this problem, here's some of the things I do, and like, here's how I kind of approach a thing. And like, maybe if you try to kind of think of it in this way, maybe, and I'm like, it does give me some perspective and a different way of thinking of things. But here's another thing. Therapists can actually, I forget the term. It's like, but like a therapist that treats people with like PTSD can actually end up getting PTSD. There's a doctor.
Yeah, I know that. I know the term you can't think of, and I can't quite think of it either. But I know what you mean.
Yeah, like there's a doctor for like I think like 30 years. He's been treating vets with PTSD before they even knew what the fucking term was. He's been treating Vietnam vets for so long now, like he's actually developed PTSD on his own and has had to seek out his own treatment for it. Because like, like he was absorbing like the worst. Okay. Like I've, like I sit down in these support groups with veterans, and the stories I hear are soul crushing, and you're just like, oh my God, I can't even like, like you start to like gain some perspective, and you're like, I thought things that I dealt with were rough. Like, I can't even imagine being in that situation. And then that starts to weigh on you, and you hear these stories, and like, that's just the thing, is like, like even when you're trying to be like emotional support, like, for my wife, who is like, my emotional support, she also has to kind of keep herself in check, because she cannot, fully be devoted to that, because it'll weigh on her after a while, and she'll need her own help.
I think that's why I don't like talking to people with bipolar disorder a lot of times, because not only do I start like judging them sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes, like whenever I can actually, I guess, in a sense, connect with somebody, I start to feel guilty that I guess my problems aren't as bad as theirs.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah. I've gotten that feeling before too.
and it causes its own, I guess, kind of problems for me, because I'm sitting here on like 5 different medications,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm relatively very easily treatable. Like they've mentioned that they're like, you've made a lot of progress since whenever you first came in here. I'm like, yeah, and I almost feel bad that it's just so easy just for me to just take a few medications and, talk about some stuff. And, I only have to go once a month. I don't have to be in there every week, every 2 weeks. If I miss one and have to reschedule, I'm not in like this horrible situation because I haven't, gone to talk about something. And it's, I guess, a lot of times when I hear people that have worse times than me, it's very, very depressing. It gets me very, very depressed. And I think that's another reason why I like to just avoid, because I joined some Facebook groups for bipolar disorder, and I had to leave them like almost immediately.
I mean, for me, the first anxiety group I joined on Facebook, I actually ended up, like, I was so active in the group, I eventually became the admin of the group, and all the other admins ended up leaving at one point. And I constantly had people messaging me, and I became the sole admin of a group with over 3,000 members with mental health issues. And they were like, I would constantly be getting like DMs and like people like, and I would try my hardest, but after a while I was like, I can't do this. It's too stressful for me. And I had to step away, because I was like, this is causing me more anxiety than, like, I want to be able to support people, but I can't do it at the risk of my own health, like, yeah. Okay. I do want to I do want to wrap up the stream soon.
But, we haven't let Mike that much.
Mike's been quiet. But I have a question from the chat that I want to bring up real quick, and this can be our last discussion topic before we call it a night. He says, I have a fun question for the panel, or he or she, I'm not entirely sure. I have a fun question for the panel. If you had to diagnose the mental health industry, what would be the diagnosis and prognosis?
Ooh.
Now, I would have to say myself, I have no fucking clue. I would probably say schizophrenic.
Borderline personality disorder.
Yeah. Like, actually, that's no. I want to tell you who proposed that question. I'm actually, like, right now I'm copying and pasting that, and I'm going to send that to my wife. Because she's a mental health professional. So if you're not following me already, follow me at sarcasm_liberty on Twitter. And then like tag me in a post about that question. I will ask her and I will give you her response specifically as what she would say, because my wife has a very mixed view of the mental health industry, mostly because, she's one of those people that's completely and openly willing to recognize and attack the flaws of it. Like she thinks it's
good. So you have to keep things healthy.
Yeah. But
I've known too many people who work in mental health who keep praising it, how amazing it is.
So I think for
absolute fucking nuts, yeah. Doesn't
for
well.
For prognosis, so like if we want to say the mental health industry has a problem, what do we do to fix it?
It's got a bunch of different issues, and I think one of the biggest ones is that the therapists are starting to also become afraid of some of their clients. I mean, in many ways, it's almost like the mental health industry has anxiety by itself, because I've been seeing all of these posts going around on Tumblr about like how basically if your therapist is trying to make you better, it's oppression. I'm not even kidding. It's like basically that's the
Jesus.
gist of it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
No, I haven't had a
It's
chance to
like-
watch it, but I just saw this. I just saw the subject
What
of
you should
Armored
do
Skeptic
is
uploaded the video of
um,
that. Apparently, depression's just like apparently depression is fake, and I think he's like
I
attacking.
haven't watched that one either yet.
I
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I
have
want
to see that.
to, but I want to
But,
watch. Yeah, I want to watch it with my wife because I think like I'm sure whatever video he's debunking is gonna like make her want to pull her fucking hair out and scream at. Like,
Actually,
Yeah.
I'm gonna see.
the
her
wife should
face.
just watch
Like-
the
Is
video.
it that
That's
That-
the reason
Actually,
why.
you know what would be great? What would be great for like a mental health stream is or just a stream. I'm gonna see if I can get my wife on, and we will do a live reaction to that video because I want to see her face when that video comes out. I just want to see like how pissed.
I kind of
she would
want
get.
to.
Yeah. You know,
It's
I
kind of
will.
one of those things like.
Yeah.
Hmm?
No, I just like if I can actually pull that together, I will let everybody know for sure.
Yeah, I
That's
think I know
awesome.
which video you're talking about, and what it is, and I see it as he's confusing depression with sadness,
Mm.
like
Okay.
general
Well,
sadness.
okay, like I saw a lady in the clip
If-
or on the thumbnail, so I think it was like a lady made the video.
responded to
Okay,
someone.
maybe this is something
who
else then.
is,
Yeah, because it seems like
Like,
Armored Skeptic was like trying to debunk it. So
Yeah. He was debunking it.
yeah, because I mean he debunks a lot of that kind of stuff. Because it's like you know like
This
like
must be a
science-
different video.
yeah,
Well,
it,
There
like,
was not
I-
even the first video where she went completely bullshit about. There was
Yeah.
another one which he did before.
I need to
Oh,
watch
then-
it, but I kind of like. I honestly think the only reason I haven't watched it yet is because I want to see my wife's reaction to it. But I think if I can get her on a live stream to like do a live reaction to it, I will totally watch it before her, so I can like help know when I'm going to need to pause, so she can like flip out about something that lady says. But
I'm gonna
Like-
watch it too beforehand too. This is gonna be.
yeah, definitely. I'm gonna actually. I'll talk to her
I just
tomorrow.
watched that video today, by the way.
Yeah, the video
Okay.
I saw had a guy in it, and
Just
it
they
was
said in
different.
the chat it was a Nicole Arbor video
Yeah.
about depression.
Mm.
Apparently,
Oh.
that
Mm.
Skeptic was reacting to. So I can only imagine how stupid it is.
That-
Well,
she doesn't aim
Nicole
for a bit of like
Arbor-
comedy sake, but I do use comedy between quotes because she's like, let's try and make stupid jokes about it.
Nicole Arbor is the
It's
worst.
so
Nicole
fucking-
Arbor.
It even
Her
says-
I don't know who that is, but I'll take
Oh,
your word.
okay. Hold real quick. Heathen, did you did you hear about like the fat people? Like the lady was like making fun of fat people, and it was like this big thing for a little while. And she was
No.
just her straight up just insulting fat people for like 3 minutes straight, trying to be funny and edgy, and like everybody got super pissed at her. She do you know who Matthew Santoro is on YouTube?
Oh yeah, he dated her.
No, but
He's like
that's okay. Hey.
Okay, no, it's fine. You know what? Your life is probably better not knowing who Nicole Arbor is, actually. So
I don't like. I follow some YouTube drama, but I try to
I
mostly
don't.
follow the YouTube drama that involves like
the only
people
reason
actually
followed
acting
him.
like crap and not just
the
drama
only
for the
reason
sake
I
of
knew
drama.
the only reason I knew about it is because I am subscribed to Rob Dyke because I love his like strange mysteries videos and his why would you put that on the internet, because he goes full on like just attack mode when it comes to Tumblr because he fucking hates Tumblr feminists, and it is
Oh,
amazing
boy.
to watch him rip apart those posts.
I have a mixed set of feelings about Tumblr. I really do.
I think if you
Depends which side of Tumblr you're on. There is still a good side. It's
Yeah.
more like an artistic side. I'm like, I can
But-
enjoy that part.
But like,
He's
but
like,
no, I mean,
like Rob
What I
Dyke
was-
is best
what I
friends
was-
with Matthew Santoro, and then Matthew Santoro and I guess Nicole Arbor were dating, and then like
Were dating.
had like abused him, like she like punched him in the face or something at one point. It was like being
Well,
really shitty and like psychotic.
emotional abuse of most.
right? But I
Yeah,
guess
and
like
that's the only reason I
back-
knew about it.
Why during the video? I've seen his video
back
about it.
onto
Yeah, let's get back on topic.
like back on the topic though. Like one of the things that kind of made me bring up all of this on Tumblr as well is basically that it's kind of one of the main effects is that the main type of therapy that SJWs are okay with is basically just the sort where you kind of listen and then ask questions back. It's what in my undergraduate work they referred to as therapeutic communications, and that's like now the only okay form of therapy is you just listen, you rephrase it into a question, and you try to reflect their emotions and feelings, and try to, like, you know, at best you might be able to sort of guide their own brains to an answer, but like you're not allowed to do any form of interventions ever. It's basically like,
okay, like
or something. I believe that they do.
There was this episode of King of the Hill, and I'm gonna go slightly off topic here, but
I've never watched that show, but this sounds like it's gonna be hilarious.
It's gonna be good.
Okay.
Okay, so there's the son on the show, Bobby Hill, and like they have to sign up for these different courses at their high school, and he joins this one because there's like a bunch of girls going into it, and what it is this like peer support group, and they're like assigned, these students would come in and they're supposed to like counsel them, and like it's they're constantly told like you're not allowed to like give advice. You can only say like, well, how does that make you feel? Like that's the most you can do, like, all you can do. And then like, you know, he starts giving advice, but of course he starts giving like the worst advice ever, but because he's a kid. But you know, like, but it's like that's what it makes me think of, is where the teacher's just like, no, you can't actually try to help people. You have to only like be like, well, how does that make you feel? And it doesn't actually do anything for a person.
Yeah. And that's like basically what Tumblr is trying to say is the only legitimate form of therapy now. And I'm just like,
I'm sorry, what is the only legitimate form of therapy?
But that basically what he was describing as the peer support type model, or therapeutic communications, basically.
Yeah.
Like
the how you feel model never have worked for me.
Well, not just how does that make you feel, but like say someone tells you that story, and so you basically ask them a question based on their story, and that's like all you're allowed to do.
Okay.
Like you basically have to reflect only what they've said and can't really like do much more than nudge.
Like here, I'll give you some like two specific examples with my therapist, where I'm sure like the SJW types would freak out about this, but one of the most significant moments, which is like the therapist I saw in Indianapolis when we were living close to there, and he pulled me out from like a really bad depressed state where I could barely get out of bed. You know, his like there was a time and like I broke down and I was so upset, and I feel like a lot of people, like a lot of therapists, would have tried to coddle me in that moment. What this guy did, because he knew me well at this point, he like scooted his chair close, leaned in, gotten up like this far away from my face, and was like, "Hey," like really loud, and it like startled me. And he was like had his hand up, and he's like, "This isn't your fault." And, like he got like really like serious and stern, and like I was just like, "Oh God!" Like it startled me, and I just kind of sat there listening to him. Like I completely forgot why I was so upset, and I was just like absorbing everything he was saying to me, and I was like, this guy understood that that's what I needed in that moment. And that was the only way I was going to listen to what he said, was to just like be super direct with me, be very confrontational about it, because that's what I needed. If he had been like kind of patting me on the back, being like, "Oh, you're going to be fine," or something like that, it would have done nothing for me. I always brought that up because like if, you know, I'm sure he didn't do that to anybody else. I'm sure he did it to somebody else if he felt like they needed it, but he knew who I was at that point. He knew that's what I needed. Something my current therapist does, and she's really good about, is calling me on my bullshit. If she asks me a question and I don't give her a fully honest answer, she will call me out on it. And it makes me go back, really think about the question, and then give a fully, like, from my heart answer. You know, like she knows if I'm half-assing a response, you know, and she will call me out on it every fucking time. I don't know how she does it, but you know, she can do that. And I'm sure like, you know, like that kind of clashes. And I'm like, you know what? If it wasn't for people who were willing to like take that kind of approach with me, I wouldn't be better off than I was then. I would feel like shit all the time, because I wouldn't like have any like somebody like being stern, direct, even confrontational, and like clashing my kind of like being kind of more lazy with how much I want to open up, you know, because it's part of like, you know, if you're not willing to open up, you know, you're not going to get anything out of therapy. It's just not going to work. So, okay, like for my wife, what she says, she sees a lot of, because she's a marriage and family therapist. So what she deals with a lot of kids. So she will see these like teenage girls, and they just don't want to talk. They don't want to talk at all. So she'll say she'll come home and she'll just be frustrated because she'll be like, I spent an hour asking questions, got nothing. Like they would just kind of nod their head, be like, yeah, kind of thing like that. Wouldn't want to open up and talk. So then the next session, she brings in a card game, and then they start playing. And suddenly, as they're playing, she's sneaking in questions, and she's talking this, and that. And then suddenly this girl starts opening up, having fun, talking more, feeling more comfortable. And then suddenly they're able to move somewhere, like towards a direction of like understanding what the problem is, how can we fix it, and things like that. And like to take an approach to therapy where you don't like be that direct, you don't kind of really confront the person in a way, you're not going to get anything out of it. That's just
it depends per person. Some people prefer if you add a direct, and some they actually get blocked more. Like I don't want to answer.
Well, and that, like,
one of the ways to get around that with some of the therapists is more of what I refer to as, and this is not a technical term, this is just me making this term up out of thin air, but they're what I refer to as backdoor therapies. So things like that meditation app that told you to think of a dinosaur so that you wouldn't be anxious because you were too busy thinking of a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Things that it's like you don't really know why it works, and it's because it's out of left field and you don't expect it, and so it's like that's the main way they're trying to find around some of these more. The SJWs have recognized the old tactics and decided they're oppressive, so we have to come up with new ones that they don't realize what we're doing.
Yeah, but I mean, here's the thing though. I'm like, and everybody's different when it comes to therapy. Everybody's going to react in a different way. But I always maintain the sign of a good therapist is one that can customize your treatment to your personality, who's willing to change and adapt. Because if you're sitting down with a therapist and they cannot get you to a point to where you can open up and talk to them, you're seeing the wrong therapist. Because there's somebody out there that's going to get you to talk. They're going to find some way to get you to open up, find some way. Like, as far as I know, my wife has yet to find a client that she couldn't crack, and eventually get to open up and talk and really, start to emote after a while, because she will find ways, like one of my favorite things she did for a kid was the kid was just so into Pokemon. And then they do this like ropes course training thing. Like they actually go to like this whole ropes course thing, like a high ropes course. And with like the families, and it like teaches the families to bond and trust each other and all this kind of stuff. And they like for this kid, once he completed the ropes course, she actually gave him like a gym badge from Pokemon as like a congratulations thing, and like she finds these ways to really connect with people. And that's the sign of a good therapist. I've had my therapist, like the one I saw in Indianapolis, he would ask me, because I would tell him I would write, and he would ask me to bring in things. And then the next time I would see him, I would print stuff off, bring him in. And then the next time I would see him, he had read everything I brought him, and he would talk to me about it. Like, and he would like be using, because it was like a fantasy thing. And I was like he was using character names and like city names and stuff I came up with, and like, it was very obvious he had read it. He didn't skim it. He read it, and that was the way he was able to connect with me more. That's the sign of a good therapist, that they can get you to open up. If you're seeing your therapist and you feel like you just can't be open and honest with them, you're seeing the wrong therapist.
Oh, I will say that I know really good people who generally work in mental health places. And it doesn't have to be the psychiatrist. Just like a place where I live with people with autism, ADHD, and shit like that. It's good to have people who go more like personal and to try to find a way to talk with yourself. Like, we just go by that book and we can. You have to react this and this, so we can react to this and this and this. That doesn't work. You need to get more personal with people. You have to kind of frame it like ways like try to talk with people, get a bit interested into them, so they talk faster with you. Like I've seen both type of people work here, and the ones who clearly go with the book really get hated really quick by people because they're so unpersonal and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then
Oh,
you can
yeah.
start, yeah. Okay.
Oh,
I
I
wanna,
like to refer to that as the PhDs or MDs who have been in the psych lab so long they start to see people as lab rats. Yes.
they don't have to be old. I've seen young people do it as well because it's one thing apparently they get learned a lot of time if they're going to take the mental health course. Like
yeah.
they're gonna learn like go by the book.
Well,
go
that's
by the
even
book.
more so when they're fresh out of their doctorate, though, because all they have is that lab experience. So it's like they, so sometimes they're just trying to look for putting you right into whatever they can find in the DSM, and they don't have that. It's like there's a sweet spot in there.
Yeah. From the chat, I want to add, because somebody said, like, my articulation and manipulation goes into autopilot in a clinical environment. If you want to, in the chat, kind of maybe elaborate on that more. I'm curious as to exactly what you mean. Like, because I do imagine, like, I know, like, for me, my initial like introduction into therapy, I was incredibly defensive. Things that they want, like suggestions, or like once they were like starting to get to the point of diagnosing, or like being like, hey, why don't we try this? I would always just be like, well, that sounds stupid, or I don't want to have to do that. I don't think that's going to help me. I don't think this is the problem. I was very dismissive of things, and a lot of the things they tried to tell me to like try to do to calm myself down, I wasn't even open to. I would just be so like not like aggressive about it. I would just be very dismissive, like that's stupid, kind of attitude. And then like when you're going into therapy, it took me I go to group therapy sessions. It took me a long time to be able to do that, because the idea of going into a group of people that I don't know and being completely open about myself was incredibly difficult, because like it's easier when you're talking to somebody one-on-one, but it's more hard, like it's way different situation when there's a big ass group of people there. And like, I don't want to say big ass group, like, like I've been in sessions where there was like 3 people, and then ones where there's like 20 people. I've been in all different sizes. So like you do have to start to just kind of open your mind. If you part of like the mark of a good therapist is somebody who can get you to feel at ease at some point, through some. I'm
just giggling because I'm remembering the horror story that was my first
do you want to share
with a psychiatrist. Okay, so I had gone to this private school for like 1 year because my family couldn't really afford private school, but that's a long other story. And that private school did not know how to handle kids with any sort of mental health problem. And my OCD was first cropping up, and I was spending like hours washing my hands, and other side problems came up from how the teachers badly handled that, et cetera, et cetera. And basically the guidance counselor insisted to my parents that they take me to see a psychiatrist. Well, they found one who was doing a study on second generation people who had a parent that had been exposed to Agent Orange in the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm one of the youngest people in the country that's true of. My dad was exposed to Agent Orange like 23 times. And basically, and I'm like anonymously in a textbook somewhere cited as a case study, and I've read the case study, and it was very bad. He did not ask the right questions, and he drew wrong conclusions for it. But I just basically mostly remember being 8 years old, running through a hospital in a city I had never been to, hiding in one of the bathrooms, and doing that little kid thing of like, I pulled up my feet and I just hid on one of the toilets, where it's like trying to be like, they won't find me in here. It was also really awkward with my OCD, because it's like I was kind of torn between, it's like, I don't want to be found, and oh god, this is dirty and gross.
No, like I didn't do therapy until after I left. Okay, now my first therapy session was in the military, and I wasn't forced to go. I had kind of like a breakdown, and then I remember like my squad leader like took me into my room, and like at first he was about to yell at me because like I like almost broke the door off the hinges, like leaving the building we were in about something, and he was about to come yell at me, and then he saw like just the mess I was in, and he was like, all right, let's go. And he like took me to my barracks room, went and got our first sergeant. My first sergeant came in, like sat down, talked to me. He was like, look, I've experienced this too, and he's like, here's what I'm going to suggest to you is, while it's your own choice, go try to see somebody before this happens again, and then in a bad situation, and then you're forced to go. And yeah, so I was like, all right. And I made the decision and I went. And then I remember like, because there was like, I think it was like the 7th floor or something, because you go to like the hospital building on base, and then like it was like the top floor where like everybody knew that floor as like the mental health area. So there were always jokes about that floor, and like you'd go in the elevator. Like I actually went, like it took me like 3 tries to get up to that floor because other people would come in the elevator with me, and I didn't want to hit that button, and then they see me go up to that floor, because people are going to look at you funny if they see you go up to that floor. And then I remember sitting there waiting with all these other people, and like for the thing to even open, and it was just like there's this guy like seeing something like, he's like, if they don't hurry up, I'm gonna like jump out this window. And like he was so fucking mad about something, and there was like he had this like guy like with like this really big guy with him, like making sure like he didn't actually legitimately try to kill himself like while they were waiting for the place to open and stuff like that. I was just like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck am I doing here? And then I remember like going to see this person a couple of times, and like they couldn't have cared less. And I was just like, fuck therapy. This is such a waste of time. This is so stupid. I was still in that military mindset of, no, I don't need help. I can get through this on my own. I'm fine, kind of bullshit. And so it actually wasn't until I met my wife, who was getting her bachelor's at the time in psychology and wanted to be a marriage and family therapist. And I opened up and explained like the generalized anxiety disorder and stuff. And then, after a while, she encouraged me to go to the VA and attempt to seek some treatment. So I did. And, after some trial and error, I found some people that actually legitimately helped. But yeah, like that's what I always tell people, like, don't let a bad experience put you off from it for good, because I've had bad experiences with specific therapeutic approaches. Like I said, like I've said several times, like anytime I hear the words cognitive behavioral therapy, I feel like I'm gonna throw up, because I'm just like, I fucking hate it. But it's been tried multiple times for multiple things for me, and it just doesn't fucking work. And every time they try it, it just never works. And here's the thing about the VA, because I've like had to move around a bunch. I've been to 4 different VAs, and then even within the same VA, where all of your records are there, if you go from one care of a person to a different one, they start over from the very beginning. So if you're seeing, no, it doesn't. It doesn't really. If you've been seeing, no, like, here's the thing: if you've been seeing a mental health professional for like 2 years, 2 years, and you've made so much progress, and they've customized it, and they have all these notes and all this stuff, and then you have to move like a couple cities away, and you go see somebody else, and they have access to all those records, and they start from square one of, let's start from cognitive behavioral therapy. Let's move on to step 2 and step 3.
Through it,
Like,
but either it is either good for them to like go take a bit of their own version of how to.
Like
they have to.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like,
the beginning as well.
It's just how the VA functions, though. Like, even like my physical health was the same way. In the same fucking building went from one doctor to the next, who was just a couple doors down, and she legitimately went back to square one with my physical health after 10 years of medical records and surgeries and all this shit. They went back to square one as if like it was an acute condition, not a chronic one. You know, like, oh, he's experiencing back pain. Well, let's figure out what it is. I'm like, no, dumbass, I know what it is. I have the records to show you. And that's just how
they should read it. That is one thing I would say that is the problem in mental health these day and age. They don't read those reports anymore. Like here, they even where I live is like they have to like if there's something new happens, they like have to report it in some book where they can like okay, for the new person going to work the next day, they know what the fuck is going on. So the person can react this and this and this to it. Most of them don't read that stuff anymore. So they just come in like, okay, like there was first a rule that I had to go to bed early in the morning, so we can do a stupid work on. It's more a busy therapy for the people who work it, and was actually good for me. But then it was decided to no longer do it. But some people have never read it. That was no longer be done. So they just come here early at the fucking morning, like, so let's go downstairs so we can go fucking walk. I'm like, no, that rules no longer apply to me anymore. And you have to, early in the fucking morning, try to fucking explain to them why it isn't. It is so fucking annoying. Like, people should learn to read those things before they're gonna go do stuff.
Yeah.
But they don't.
All right, guys. We're kind of on a roll, but I was actually planning on ending this stream an hour ago. So we got off on so many different tangents. It has been so fucking awesome. I have loved the stream so far. So if anybody has like a couple kind of last minute things, somebody from the chat wants to shout something out. If you guys want to say anything to kind of wrap it up real quick, feel free to speak up. I do want to end.
We should Mike. Let's speak.
Yeah, Mike. You've been quiet, man. You want to?
I'm okay.
Okay. Have you just been kind of absorbing everything?
I've been hit with brain fog.
Yeah. No, that's fine, man. That's fine. I mean, you don't have to jump in, though. I mean, like, it's your first one, so totally understandable. Yeah. Everybody else has, well, not Heathen hasn't been on this one yet, but
I haven't been on this one, but I'm used to being on streams.
Yeah, Mike usually does the political ones with me, but this is the first mental health one he's jumped on. Lonnie and Madness have been. I think both of you have been on all the ones we did so far, right?
We only have 2 so far, and I've been on both.
Just 2 so far, but yeah.
I think
you hit both of them, Lonnie. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I did the first one. I haven't done y'all's political ones. I want to do the political ones.
Yeah. I need to get back to a more regular schedule. I'm hoping to. And just for anybody who's wondering, watching right now, me and Jason are not doing a stream tomorrow because of the holiday weekend, but I might be joining somebody else's stream like later in the evening.
Wait, there's a holiday weekend?
Yeah, it's Memorial Day on Monday.
Oh. My brain did not process that because of
I didn't even
reasons.
remember because I was all like, oh, Zoe, you have like 4 days of school left. And my wife was like, no, she has 3 days. I'm like, but school ends on Thursday. She was like, yeah, I know. I'm like, that's 4 days. She's like, yeah, she doesn't go to school on Monday. I'm like, why the hell doesn't she go to school on Monday? It's Memorial Day. It's fucking Memorial Day on Monday. Like, yeah, I was like, oh shit. Yeah, I like she's got she's gonna be marching in the parade and everything and all that stuff.
Sounds adorable.
Yeah, she did the Veterans Day parade too. Actually, she marches with her baton twirling group that they do. But so yeah, so well, I think rather than just dragging it out, I think I am going to try to keep these on Saturday nights.
Cool.
Occasionally we might move them to Fridays depending on people's schedules, but if we do move them to Fridays, I will announce on Twitter. If you have a Twitter, I encourage you to follow me on Twitter. If you don't, that's fine. Just make sure you're subbed and you have your notifications on. But I'm going to try to keep these on Saturday at 9 p.m. Typically the streams are just going to go on for like an hour and a half, but if we kind of really get on a roll,
both times that'd be long.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've gone like for 4 hours, almost 5. It happens, you know. Once we get on a roll, it's hard to kind of rein it in. So everybody in the chat,
other stuff as well.
Yeah, everybody in the chat that participated, I really appreciate it. And then as somebody was saying, like, why am I not on this? You know, like I'm actually always open to people joining the panel on these streams, because like that's kind of like I'm going to create a whole conversation here where we can all talk about this kind of stuff and talk about our experience and support people. Yeah, and like every week, we're planning on having like a specific theme for mental health stuff. So I'm going to try to keep that going. Like the first one was personal responsibility. Last week was creativity. This week was you know, racing thoughts and anxiety, and we're going to change it up.
Isn't it kind of funny how it was racing thoughts and anxiety,
and we went off track?
Right.
Well, it's actually kind of like, I mean, I'd actually forgotten that was, because I had some thoughts on that earlier, but it's like, not only did things get off track, but I didn't know quite when to jump in. Like on Cher's streams, I'm a lot more confident of just like, okay, look, I need to say something.
Yeah. No, and here's the thing. And I always tell people,
I'm
like,
trying to be polite and stuff, and
I ramble. I just never feel afraid to cut me off. If I'm rambling and you really got to jump in, I always try to, if somebody's got something to say, to just stop and let them go. I really try to make sure I'm good about that. Like if like at the most, I'll just maybe want to finish like my thought real quick, but I try to make sure everybody can speak if they need to. So never feel afraid on my streams too. If I say something that really triggers a thought in your head, I can totally understand being like, oh my God, I got to say this before I forget, because that's how my brain works. Don't feel afraid to jump in.
And if my thought goes on too long, feel free to do the same to me.
Yeah. No, yeah, we all do it. Because actually, I've had somebody in my stream before, like before the stream, she was like, hey, you kind of tend to ramble. So, you know, I just wanted to say, like, and I was like, yeah, go for it. And I was like, I told my wife what she said, and my wife like laughed, because my wife does the same thing to me. Like when I'm rambling, and she'll be like, all right, just stop, rein it in, you know, let's.
Usually I can tell whenever I've been talking too long, because I look over at my wife and she just has this face just like, you know, it's just this blank kind of face that I'm like, oh, okay.
No,
it's interesting though with the overblown like the racing thoughts thing though, because that just reminds me of the symptom in, I think it's both autism and Asperger's.
Asperger is a form of autism.
Well, I mean, technically they're genetically distinct, even though they're put into the same category in the DSM-5.
They are different, but one is
that's a gene testing thing. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. But where I was trying to go with that is, in both of those, there is the issue of, I actually had it in my head what they call it, and now my brain kind of fogged over again. Overstimulation. That's the word I was looking for. So the idea where it's like you kind of both are consuming a lot of information, and it's also kind of causing a brain fog in and of itself, because it's too much to actually process.
Yeah.
And
there's students have ADHD of the too.
Like for a while, like when my daughter was younger, she would always watch the Mickey's Clubhouse or something. I forget what it was called. It was some Mickey Mouse show, and there was this like special like movie they had, and there was something like, I think it was like it was either like a Wizard of Oz thing or like an Alice in Wonderland thing, but it was like Mickey and Donald together, and then like somebody was being like frustrated, and Donald was just flipping the fuck out on this person, and then like Mickey grabs his shoulders and kind of pushes him aside and goes, "Take a break, Donald," and then like starts calmly talking to the person and just like makes Donald walk away. And like I laughed my ass off when I saw that Mickey was just like, "Take a break, Donald." And that actually became like a thing between me and my wife. Like when I would just be flipping out about something or just be like raging or ranting about something, she'd be like, "Take a break, Donald," and like that would let me know that it was going on too long. Yeah. No, it's just it was a way to like, because you know it was hard for me to like get, because I would actually find myself annoyed if my wife would try to like rein me in, but it was hard to get annoyed if she said something so stupid like that, you know. So it'd just be like, okay, yeah, I'm being dumb now. So it was a goofy thing. It was like a way to kind of like disarm me humorously. But all right. So I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I think we've got
Make
like
people-
2.5 hours. So thanks everybody in the chat. Like I said, I'm gonna try for next Saturday at 9 p.m. Thank you so much to my awesome panel, and we'll see y'all later. Good night.
Night.